Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Dale.
And I'm Larry Rhodes. And we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists, agnostics, and this is a show for them, people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs. This is the call-in show. However, we only have one phone line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to tweet your questions or comments. Yes, I said tweet. To us live at FFTV Knox. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun meetup that often meets at a bar or restaurant. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's Happy Hour at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria. It will be after the show. We'll meet for food, drink, and conversation. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of God Delusion standing upright on the table. The monthly activities of the Rationalists of East Tennessee are on the first and third Sunday. They're usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday is a book club. The fourth Sunday is a Reflections gathering, a potluck afternoon gathering at a member's home. Today is July 17th, 2012, and we'll be talking about Jesus at the movies. In the news, I think we're going to the news now.
Oh, what is happening in the news?
Well, today, July 17th, and I'm introducing a new segment called The Church Sign. This week's church sign is from the Sacred Heart Catholic Church, if we can put that up, good. And they say that, or they ask the question, is touching yourself worth an eternity in hell? Want to take a perfectly natural activity, one that harms no one and gives much pleasure, and make it an act punishable by burning the person alive for an eternity? Just add religion. Remember, the creator of the universe is very concerned with what you do alone for pleasure in the privacy of your own home. Now, on to what's actually in the news this month. Oscar D. Perez is a 69-year-old Lake Forest man who was found guilty by a jury of 22 felony counts of lewd acts on children under 14. 4 felony counts of lewd acts on a child, and sentencing enhancement allegations for lewd acts against multiple victims. Perez faces a maximum sentence of 330 years to life, I think that would be life, in state prison, and mandatory lifetime sex offender registration at his September 14th sentencing at Santa Ana's Central Justice Center. Perez was an apostolic pastor and bishop at Iglesia Antigua Católica in Laguna Hills. He met his 5 victims through the congregation, his own sheep basically, which operates out of St. George's Episcopalian Church, and gained their trust by befriending their families and having the boys assist with church services. Between 2007 and 2011, Perez sexually assaulted 5 victims. Starting when the boys were 9 to 15 years old. Sexual assault against the victims included sodomy, oral copulation, sexual penetration, touching, etc., according to authorities. Sometime after the sexual assault of John Doe number 1, the victim told his mother about the abuse, and she reported to the Orange County Sheriff's Department. A subsequent investigation led to the discovery of John Doe number 2. Perez was arrested and charged for the first 2 victims in September 2011, and based on continued investigations and media coverage, the Sheriff's Department discovered 3 more John Does. Perez was charged by the Orange County District's Attorney's Office for additional sex crimes in January. Remember, this priest, as well as every priest and preacher, is in the business of telling us that our morals are inferior to theirs. They sell themselves as the moral leaders of the community and as representatives of God on earth. They use that position to bend believers to their will. The Catholic Church has a lot of problems right now in the public eye, but what actions do they actually take? Do they turn sex offenders over to the police when they find them? No, they actively protect them. Do they admit they're wrong and confess that condoms actually do prevent AIDS? No, they make it worse. They say that it makes it worse. And then they crack down on the nuns for the offense of showing compassion to fellow human beings who happen to be homosexuals. That's what it says here. With all the allegations and all the problems behind the Pope, things he should be concerned with, what does he actually do? Crack down on nuns for their compassion shown to the gay community. Now, on to the program. Today's program is Jesus in the Movies. And we can thank Dale for the graphics. It's a wonderful one. Very good work. This is really your topic. What about Jesus in the movies?
Well, thanks, Larry. A lot of times on Freethought Forum, you'll be coming on here and telling the folks, well, we really need to read this book by Hitchens or one of these other fine books that really educate the people that pick them up. But so often we find that we're not even reading that much anymore. We're going to the movies. We're watching documentaries. Cameron Diaz in the movie Bad Teacher. This is well, this illustrates a point. In the movie, she didn't really like teaching. She liked to sit behind her desk and nap during class period. So she would always put on a movie. And as she said so eloquently, I think movies are the new books. And as far as Jesus movies go, that's one place where a lot of people get their information. They sort of have the idea that the movie producers trying to put across the information in a correct manner, and that isn't always the case. As far as Jesus movies that are in the news just recently, from Lennox.com. Now, this is a Bollywood company I'm going to be talking about here. An Indian movie.
Eastern Indian movie.
Right. They're going to be doing a movie, the first in the world 3D Jesus movie.
Wow.
This is going to be cool. So when the whips are coming, you know, the people in the audience are going to be going like this. If they combine it with some of the more adventurous moviegoers, there might even be squirting going on from the stage. If Gallagher was involved, that might happen. Anyway, the title of the movie is in English. I have no idea how to pronounce it in Indian. But in English, the title is going to be 30 Pieces of Silver, and the film has the blessing of 35 bishops, and it's going to be made for right around $75 million. That is, if I did the calculations from rupees to dollars correctly.
Dang.
Also in the Jesus news, Jesus movie news, we have this story comes from endtimes.com. This is apparently a website that likes to concentrate on the end of the world, I think. But anyway, Jesus of Nazareth is another movie that's coming out. It is on Paul Verhoeven's book, a controversial book by the same name. This movie is beginning to set filming sometime this year, and this movie depicts Jesus as the son of Mary and a Roman soldier who...
so it's more real to earth, more down to earth, more natural. Well,
it may be more natural as far as the way babies get born, but there's a lot of people that are up in arms about it, that Mary could not have had a child by a human.
Is this a foreign film as well?
No, this one's American.
From the director name, I was kind of wondering, Lenderhoven?
Paul Verhoeven is actually the author who wrote the book, and the book is what the movie's going to be made on. I believe we have a lot of authors out there. I think Anne Rice is one of them, that they take Jesus as a departure point. And for example, she wrote a book regarding Jesus at the age of 12, about how he's playing pranks on his classmates, you know, killing them and making them come back alive and stuff like that. I have not read the book, and if I did that wrong, I met her once.
Should be entertaining anyway.
So I don't really know how much Paul Verhoeven is actually saying that he's getting the information from the Bible. I don't believe that he there's any piece of information that could support that.
Well, let me take a minute to invite the viewers to call in. This is a call-in show. We have our free lines now. You can call in 215-2288 and or Twitter your comments or questions to @FFTVKnox and FFTVKnox. That's about it. Okay.
Yeah, call in. Let us know what your favorite Jesus movies or are, and maybe which ones are not your favorite, so you could warn the viewers not to go see it. When we have, and we should say that we're going to extend this to Bible in the movies and also documentaries too. So any sort of movie about religion that you want to, that involves religion, please let us know your opinion. One of the first movies that ever had Jesus in it was The Life and Passion of Jesus Christ. That was in 1902, and it was a small of course, black and white, silent.
Wasn't it an extremely long movie too?
No, it was long, but it was just pieces of parts that put together. There was another one though that you might be thinking of, but we've had a slew of documentaries and movies on Jesus because apparently it sells. For some examples, we have a movie based on it's called The Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus is alluded to be a homosexual. In another, he's supposed to be a Marxist or a communist. I'm not really sure which they were saying.
A lot of his messages, lean in that direction.
Yeah, they really do. And for that, I'm thinking, well, maybe this guy's a little bit on the accurate side. But of the Wilder movies, and I'm not recommending any of these, but we have, this is a good one, Jesus Christ, Vampire Hunter. Now that's
what would Abraham Lincoln say?
I know it. They may have ripped off that movie, that Lincoln Vampire Hunter. But the way I figured, if Jesus is hunting after vampires, I mean, he wouldn't even have to make the sign of the cross.
Well, maybe. He could just be the sign of the cross.
I would think so, and there wouldn't be much of a fight, I wouldn't think. Now there's another one, Ultra Christ. Now this is a movie where Jesus shows up as a modern day superhero in spandex and the whole bit
With a big J on his chest?
It's a cross, I believe. Oh. It was a cross. And shows up in New York and fights crime, and that's a strange one. Another one, I'm not making this up, Zombie Jesus. This is a movie where Jesus survives the cross because he's a zombie. Now, these are, of course, just really, really ridiculous movies, and there's not much in the Bible to support any of these, with the possible exception of the zombie one. But the Bible has, and the fact that so many writers are writing on Jesus and writing different parts of the Bible, there are these small differences, and people try to make a story out of them.
I understand that there's quite a few differences in all the different versions of the Gospels that are out there, that there are actually more differences than there are actual transcripts.
Well, there's quite a few differences, but most of them agree. I skipped to the back. He dies at the end.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It comes back alive, he dies at the end. So
that could be just poetic license or writer license, that it comes back at the end.
Could be, could be. Anyway, one of the places that, and I'd like to mention this because I'm a big science fiction fan, and science fiction for years has addressed the idea of God. And we have Star Trek, Star Wars, there's a show called Stargate. Several of these answer questions and speculate about God. And that is one of the main purposes of science fiction, is to create a situation that we can step out of and then look at some particular part of our lives. For example, Robert Heinlein, he wrote many, many books, but he only used science fiction as a vehicle. He was actually writing about one book about law, one book about sex, one might include personal liberties. But that's the way science fiction goes. So,
were you talking about The Stranger in a Strange Land?
Yeah, in Stranger in a Strange Land, that as a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up. He wrote the book Stranger in a Strange Land, and it got such a cult following that people started come to him saying, let's start this religion. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yes.
Let's start this religion, science fiction writer. And Robert Heinlein basically told him to go get a life.
Yes.
Whereas L. Ron Hubbard said, oh yeah,
let's do that.
let's start that religion. Anyway, so some of the science fiction movies that you may relate to would be like Star Wars. Now, in Star Wars, you have people, there's not so much gods there, there's the Force.
The Force.
And what was the name of this new particle they just discovered? The
God particle, the Higgs boson.
The Higgs boson. As a matter of fact, it sounds like there's a correlation there between the Force and the Higgs boson. Whereas in Star Wars, you don't have a devil and a god. You just have this force that operates.
And you have representatives of the good force and the dark force.
Right, and they appear to be mostly out for themselves or working for one of a larger group. Other science fiction one I'd like to mention is Star Trek. On the television series and in the movies, they would address the idea of God quite often.
Even old gods.
Even old gods. But normally what they would come up with is that this is an alien who is impersonating a god.
A naturalistic, even though it may be futuristic in science fiction, it was a natural explanation rather than supernatural.
Or it was somebody that was being a fraud. There were several instances that came up where this person said, I'm a god, worship me.
And even in the case of Q, somebody with supernatural powers over time and space, he wasn't the god of any of the religions on Earth. He was a god, or like a god, but he didn't fit any of the preconceived notions of gods of the people on Earth.
One of the best lines I like from Star Trek was in Star Trek V, where they address this alien, and this alien says, "Bring your starship closer, because I need to."
Yeah, I need.
What?
What does God need a spaceship?
He says, "Bring your spaceship closer, so I can get aboard. I need to go somewhere." And Kirk goes, "Why does God need a spaceship?" So as movies are replacing books, in books we would have address a moral situation or a lesson is taught. Well, the same thing happens in movies. Maybe Cameron Diaz isn't all that wrong, because that is something that somebody might want to ask whenever they're reading the Bible.
But the author generally asks you to access your own human morals for a judgment call on something like that. The author, in order to teach us about humanity and morals, generally doesn't say that morals come from another place and we just need to go to that place and ask them what's right or wrong. They usually appeal to the humanity of the interaction, the people in the story, and the audience to be able to reach a consensus or what should be done, what shouldn't.
Yeah, the author tries to put you in that situation, but that was one of the greatest lines, and I think whenever you're reading your Bible, and I do encourage you to read your Bible, is you need to ask yourself, what does God need this for? But that's some of the science fiction one.
Yeah. Further than that, why didn't God make it unchanging? If His unchanging Word of God, I mean, the Bible has changed how many times in the last 2,000 years? 1,500, 2,000 years? Why didn't He make it self-updating? Why didn't He make it written in a language that would update with the language of the world?
Smart paper.
Or change to the language of the person who's reading it, make it unambiguous, instead of having 1,000 or 1,000,000 devotees to different religions interpreting His word for Him. It's just not a way I would think an intelligent God would do it.
No, I wouldn't think so. There's one series that I particularly, we're still in science fiction. There's another series that I really liked, and that's called The Ark of Truth, and that's Stargate. Now, in this, it used to be a television series, and they made a couple of movies out of it. In this series, they mainly deal with people that are impersonating gods, that start off with a Gould, and they go on to something called the Ori. And the author or the screenwriters of this show are making tremendous correlations between these Ori people and the Bible. They have their book of Ori. They have their missionaries and disciples that go out and spread the word. And if you don't like the word of the Ori, you are dead. So and this is the way that a lot of religions propagate themselves. And in this science fiction story,
What, at the point of a sword?
well, point of a sword or a ray gun or just explode your planet, but you'd be dead.
Yeah.
But this is much in the way, as far as this writer goes, he's trying to express the idea of this is actually how it's religion's propagated a lot on Earth. You either convert or die, and that's happened several times. Was it the conquistadors said convert and die, or convert and then we'll kill you?
Yes. And who was the bishop who said that the people who said that they were converting but actually going home and practicing their old religion?
Oh, yeah.
He said, kill them all, let God sort it out.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one class of the movies that we're talking about. The next class would be like documentaries. And some of you out there may know some really good documentaries, and the phone hasn't rang yet. I must be boring people to death.
No, they're wrapped. They're hanging on every word.
Is that right?
Yep.
And there's one documentary that I ran across just recently, and I'd really like to recommend to watch it. I do not think it's a good documentary, but it does make one extremely good point. Well, it makes only one extremely good. I tell you what, I'll tell you the point. That way you don't have to go watch it. Anyway, in 2008, Ben Stein, formerly of Ben Stein's Money, was a game show. Very smart guy, worked in the Nixon administration. Come out with a movie, Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. Now, in this documentary, he's saying that scientists that are advancing intelligent design are being thrown out of their colleges,
Expelled from our educational system.
expelled so that they do not talk to. And come to find out that a lot of the things Ben, probably a nice guy, but a lot of the stuff he says in it is really slanted. There's some scenes where supposedly an instructor is talking to an audience, a school audience. Come to find out that the whole thing was staged. And you had a point that...
Well, there's that famous story of P.Z. Myers and Richard Dawkins was standing in line waiting to get into the grand opening of the movie Expelled. Now, I probably got it backwards when I told you, and I may be getting it backwards here. But they both signed up for the movie. They put their name on the list. They were standing in line waiting to get in the movie. And both of these people have appeared in the movie, or at least I know that Richard Dawkins did. But anyway, before the movie started, they sent the guards out. I mean, we're talking security people at a theater, not the guards, to ask Richard Dawkins. I believe it was Richard Dawkins they asked to leave because he was famous. He's the one that they recognized, but they didn't recognize P.Z. Myers.
No, Richard Dawkins got to see it. It was P.Z. Myers that got removed.
Okay, good. So Richard Dawkins made it into the movie, and at the end of the movie, they were taking questions. They came out, they stood on stage, they received all this applause from their believers, and then they started receiving questions. And Richard Dawkins raised his hands and stood up and said, I'm sorry, P.Z. Myers did.
Yes, right. No, Richard Dawkins is the one that stood up and asked the question at the
I hate
end.
when I get these wrong. But he says, why did you expel P.Z. Myers from the line? He said, your whole movie was about not allowing all points in the educational system, and he represented a point. And he signed up. He got tickets. He was supposed to be in here with me watching this movie, and you expelled him from the line. Why would you do that if you're actually trying to say that the educational system should receive all points of view? That's so typical.
That would be embarrassing for that information to get out. I mean, expelling somebody from a review of the movie that they're in, and there's absolutely no doubt that the reason for that was to keep him from disagreeing with the slanted information that came out in the movie.
Yeah, and it was very slanted. They basically equated science with Nazism.
Yes.
If you follow science, you will end up being a Nazi and killing millions of people. But what do they want? They want to get into science class. Is science bad or good? Why don't you just teach it in religion class and what you want? So they're kind of talking out of both sides of their face.
Well, I was kind of surprised at Ben Stein. I always thought he was a smart guy and all of that, and I was really disappointed when I watched this movie and found how bad it was. However, there was one point that I walked away from that I was wanting to share, and that is you've got evolution, and this book was on, the movie was on intelligent design, and how intelligent design is a legitimate science. And they did interview several, I assume, legitimate scientists talking about intelligent design. Mm-hmm. They were articulate. I have no doubt that they were. But here's what came out of it. And that is that evolution and even intelligent design is getting closer and closer and closer. So close, in fact, that of these scientists, the only contention they have with evolution is what happens after the first few cells. In other words, if you are an intelligent design proponent, then as far as your intelligent design scientists go, there is no contention that
evolution happened.
That humans and apes shared a common ancestor.
So the only thing that they contend is how the first spark of life got in the first few cells?
Right.
That's not even evolution. That's abiogenesis. That's a whole different field of study. But then they come down in the whole movie saying that evolution is bad. I mean, as a premise of the movie, and shouldn't be taught in science class. But then the scientists that they get on representing ID do actually follow the teaching or the premises of evolution.
Right. They would have no problems with the dinosaurs, the bones, the age of the earth, and all of that. But these intelligent design scientists are not that far removed. They just have that one little point where they still have a disagreement. And as they point out in the movie, they say that no one can say exactly how that first cell came about.
The spark of life.
The spark of life. As far as another documentary, I thought, oh, here's one. You got to see this one. It's called Marjo. Good luck finding it. It was done in 1972, and it's. I've moved on now to the next documentary. It's called Marjo, M-A-R-J-O-E, and it's about a fellow named Marjo Gortner. And he is famous in the fact that he was the youngest evangelist preacher in the United States ever.
At the time. What was his religion? What, Pentecostal?
I want to say charismatic, some sort of a charismatic order, but I can't really say right now.
Maybe one of our callers would know and be able to call in and talk to us about that. But Marjo was basically a charlatan who came out later and made a whole movie about how it worked.
Actually, I don't believe Marjo was the charlatan. He started preaching at 3 years old, so I don't really think he had any evil intents at that time to fool people.
No, but later on he did. Later on he knew it was just all about making money. It was a show that he had to go on and put on and be able to make a lot of money. And when he made his expose documentary, all that came out, and he explained how all of it worked.
Yeah. He was the world's the youngest evangelist preacher at the age of 3. He was ordained at the age of 4, and you've done a marriage ceremony, haven't you?
I've done several now.
Well, he was 4 when he did his. Since then, California has passed a law that you got to be 18 or so in order to do marriages. A 4-year-old said, can you imagine saying to a 4-year-old, yes, I do. I will cleave only unto her. And
well, we're getting to the middle of the show. Let's take just a second to do the mid-program break. In case you're just turning in, this is the Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock Eastern on Community Access TV, Comcast Channel 12 in Knoxville. You can also see us streaming online outside of the Knoxville area by going to ctvknox.org. And you can send us feedback at the email address on your screen, freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. It's kind of hard to see, but it's like right there. But don't wait, this is a call-in show, and we are live today, July 17th, 2012. Viewers can call in now at the number on the screen. You can also tweet us questions and comments live during the show, which we'll attempt to answer at FFTV at FFTV Knox. I keep trying to put a .org or a .com on it. Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets several times during the week, and we have evening meetups for fun, food, and drink. Our purpose is to supply a venue for camaraderie, community, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. I believe we have a little video for that, if we can run that. Okay, apparently we're having trouble finding the video. The Rationalists of East Tennessee have Sunday activities involving lively presentations and discussions of subjects topical and timeless. Once a month, we get together for book club. You do not need to be to have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where if you find that you don't believe in God, you'll find also that you're not alone. Okay, we're going to the break, commercial.
Everyone else? Well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
And welcome back. Where were we on your documentary list?
Well, we were just talking about Marjo and cleared that out. If you want to see Marjo, this is a documentary about this. He did a documentary when I think he was around 25, 27. He had quit at doing evangelism at around 18, and then went back into it for this one last time to make some money and to make this movie. But he was obviously manipulated by his parents. They would, his mother in particular, she would do such things as hold his head underwater, I believe it was, in order to get him to memorize these verses and to do all the movements.
The movements, yeah. She would actually cue him on stage by some of her own movements and words.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you saw the film.
I saw parts of it.
Anyway, you can get it on Netflix. So if you don't have Netflix, you might want to, if you want to get some of the odd films that are out there, that's one of the few avenues that's left open to you anymore.
Yeah, you can look it up on YouTube, and there are a lot of snippets from the movie, if not the entire movie broken up on YouTube.
I would go there and try that. Also, let's. We're still in the area of documentaries, and we mentioned a bad documentary, Expelled No Intelligence Allowed. I was impressed with another one, Flock of Dodos. If you're a person who adheres to the idea of evolution, then you might want to see this, because this puts a lot of the arguments into such very clear cartoon-like terms that's easy to follow and might help you pass it on to someone else if they have such a question.
Flock of dodos.
Flock of dodos.
It's funny that I've not heard of that yet.
Well, dodos don't fly, so a flock of dodos, that's the joke. Well, dodos don't even live anymore. They're dead.
They're exterminated. Yeah.
Anyway, getting to another movie, a documentary, would be Religious. This is Bill Maher's movie, and this is a good man, a smart man. I really like some of the stuff he does, but I thought Religious was a movie that you can just skip because the stuff that he talks in the movie is not anything I couldn't get from walking on the street here in East Tennessee. But
he was one of the first skeptic movies that were put out there that really talked to the people on the street and got their impressions on atheism.
Yeah. We have a
Okay,
call.
we have a call coming in. Welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname?
My name is Paul.
Hello, Paul. Do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, when you talked about evolution a second ago, and you talked about the common descent, all that, how does the atheist or the naturalistic perspective account for the origin of life itself? Like, where did it come from? How did the cell come to be? How did it come to exist as it is?
I know what the problem is. The problem is we don't have the banner up here. That's what's confusing the caller. Can we get that back up?
He was asking how a cell first came
Yeah, I
into
know.
being. Do we have
the
a banner?
movies? Oh, well, listen, about where that came up is in reviewing a documentary called Expelled. You still with me?
Yeah, I'm familiar with intelligent design and that the movie Expelled. I'm familiar with that. So.
Okay, so your question was, how did the first cell come about?
Right. How does the atheistic naturalistic perspective account for the origin of life?
I don't know. Do you know?
No, we're not
Okay.
biologists, but
We
I
don't
will
know.
say this. The Miller-Urey experiments showed that a lot of the naturally occurring biological chains of chemicals exist in nature and in space, and when they fall to Earth, and when they came to Earth in the environment that it was conducive to forming longer and longer chains and having those chains replicate themselves.
He's
Now,
aware of that.
some of the science say that the cell was a natural next step in that it kept salt water out, fresh water in, and that was a definite advantage to the chains of molecules that were inside the cell. How that happened exactly, you would have to go to a biologist or even try to look it up. Have you asked that question of a biologist or done research of that on the internet or on YouTube? Because there are definitely some good videos out there about that.
I have looked at some, but not completely.
And remember that evolution doesn't say anything about abiogenesis.
Right. Well, I mean, I was just looked up when you mentioned the word biogenesis. I just looked it up on the internet just now, and basically biogenesis says that life comes from.
Can come from non-life. Yes.
Right. It cannot come from non-life. So, from what I'm gathering from what you're telling me, that you're saying that life came from non-life.
We're saying it can. Now, what's your position on it?
Well, I mean, I don't think. I mean, the cell is too complex to be able to come by. There's the order of protein, the order mechanism of forming protein, the production of energy. All this stuff is too complex to assume that random chance or.
But you really don't know what is too complex for nature, do you? I mean, you're at a point saying, this is too complex, but you really have no biological education to be able to look at it and say, that is too complex for nature, because you really don't know what nature is capable of doing. Because you've assigned all the stuff that nature has done to God or to a supernatural being.
Well, my natural understanding of complex things like a computer or a car or a TV or an airplane.
All of these things are non-replicating hardware. They don't have replication. They don't have descent with modification. They don't have anything that would allow them to build on previous generations all by themselves, like nature does.
Right. Well, that just proves my point, because in a sense, a living system more complex than a computer or TV, and you're saying that came by random chance, where the TV.
No, it didn't come by random chance. You're throwing that in there, and that is not the case. Natural selection makes it happen. Random chance wouldn't. Now, there is an element of random chance in mutation. Cosmic rays hitting molecules, changing chemical states, not chemical states, chemical makeups. But to be able to pass that on to future generations of molecules, you have to have an environmental selection agency there to do that, environmental selection pressure. And that works very well. That's the whole thing that Darwin was putting forward. A lot of people had thought about evolution before Darwin, but he was the one who identified natural selection as the tool that would make it actually happen.
Well, no, I'm actually just talking about the origin of life itself. I'm not talking about, let's say, the process after that. I'm talking about pulling all the pieces together.
This is what I call her.
Organized system to be able to function properly, to replicate, to do all this stuff. You're saying the natural laws and forces.
Yeah, well, we're okay. When we get right down, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Caller, just was it last year during Darwin Day that the fellow came around and talked at the different universities and churches and all?
Wouldn't doubt it.
It was last time. Did you happen to go to any of those talks, caller?
No, I mean, I didn't go into this. I'm just thinking about it logically.
I believe his name was Anderson. I'm not really certain about this, but he was a thermodynamic nuclear whatever scientist, and he was saying that something similar to what you were, in that we don't know how it started, and it's very complicated. Now, he is a intelligent design scientist, and the question that was asked to him was, okay, do we need a God at this point? Everything's moving. We got trees that reproduce, humans reproduce. Do we need a God in order to keep things going? And he said no. So if it's this point of contention is how did the cell start? And is that what you were saying?
Right. Well, I mean, it's got to have it. Yeah, you're looking at it as the system is already functioning. What I'm saying is, to me, logic would dictate it as it takes. Like when I'm looking at my computer, I'm looking at the TV right now. That's a very complex process. So somebody had to go throughout the world, pull all the materials together, put it in the right sequence, right combination, the right quantities for me to be looking at the screen to be able to view you guys over in downtown.
Okay, that's fine.
That makes a lot
so you're saying it's complicated.
Well, but I mean, which makes more sense? Something that somebody to pull all the pieces together.
Well, that's a good question. Which makes more sense? Either the fact that it could have been done by the forces of nature, or it could have been done by magic.
It could have been done by an entity who you have no idea where it came from, who really it is, how he did it, and you can't even prove that this entity exists. I mean, and you're saying that this doesn't work. I mean, it's too complex for this to work. It has to be my God. It has to be an intelligent agent to do it. Now, that's where you're going. You may not want to admit it, but aren't you going to your God? And if you are, then you have to prove also that he's the God of Abraham, that we have souls, that souls live on after we do, with all of our memories, that they live in a place of good or bad, that those places actually exist and that we can go there. I mean, your work is just started if we even came up and said, okay, it's too complex. And every other religion would jump right in there with you and say, it's our God.
Well, no, I'm just saying, okay, now I'm not saying which God it is. All I'm saying is, from a naturalist perspective, it can't account for the state, the complexity of life.
Okay, well then it really just boils down to the scientists saying, yeah, it can, and you're saying, no, it can't.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
Yeah, I mean, so we're stuck until science finds out actually how it happened. I believe that'll happen.
Let the scientists argue it out. They're doing just fine. They've gotten down to this point where, we descended from a common ancestor with the apes, and as far as intelligent design people, you must agree.
All I'm saying is the complexity.
Yeah,
wait a minute. The complexity can be accounted better by somebody bringing it together than it would be something just natural laws.
Okay.
I can put all pieces of an airplane in a warehouse.
Right. We've heard the airplane analogy several times. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
That's not a living system. Remember, we're talking about living systems that can replicate and pass their changes on to following generations. The tornado through a junkyard does not hold any analogy to that.
But I mean, a living system is more complex than an airplane. That's all I'm saying.
We're going round and round.
Yeah, we are. I think we're back to the beginning.
Do you have a favorite Jesus movie you can share with
Yeah,
us?
we were talking about that.
Well, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm addressing something that to me, Ralph. Jesus movie. I don't like all the Jesus movies to begin with. So I can agree with you on that. But
Oh, okay. Any Jesus movie that you would like to recommend or not recommend? Or a Bible movie?
well, I mean, the best movie I've seen as a play, as a Christian movie, would be the movie Great.
I didn't
You're
get that.
breaking up too much. Can you try it again?
I said I would recommend the movie Courageous. It's not a good movie, but it's a good
All
night.
right, Courageous, y'all. That's
heard
one of
that.
our callers, and get out there and see that. We got something else. Caller, thank you very much for joining us today.
We're here every week. Have you seen us here before?
Oh yeah, I've called before. I guess you forgot me.
No, I recognize Paul. It's just a lot of Pauls out there.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye. Okay, next, we had some points here that no biologist says that the first life was actually a cell. If you want to talk about origins, we're not talking about evolution. This was passed to me by one of the audience members, and we made that point a little bit earlier on, that the first origin of life is not evolution. Evolution steps in at that point and says, how does that life change over the course of time, over billions of years? And
Well,
he was asking
that's,
about how, if he believed in evolution or not. Did he actually say if he
I think he said he didn't have a problem with it. I wasn't really sure. Really couldn't get an answer out of it. But as far as evolution goes, the creation scientists, for what people there are that's doing that sort of thing, are not that different from the evolutionists now. They don't deal with the dinosaurs and all that. All that's, as far as they're concerned, it's settled. Let's move on.
What gets me is, if I make one more point about it, is that people like Paul would call in and say, scientists can't really tell us how it happened. But they say that they know it's too complicated for any nature. How do they get that knowledge? How do they know it's too complicated for nature to do? They don't know all the things that nature can do. Okay. I mean, it just baffles me that they can make a claim like that and then not accept the claims of scientists who have actually done the research in that field for 20, 30, 40 years.
Well, the line is open now. Paul's off the line. Somebody else wants to call in. Our subject was Jesus in the movies, and we got off track
Or
there a
Bible
little
in
bit.
the
Or
movies.
Bible in the movies. Any sort of religious type movie show you'd like to talk about.
Yeah.
Another documentary that I wanted to mention, it's a favorite of mine, is The History of Sex. And you can get that off of Netflix. If
We may have
anybody-
had some of our audience members pick up their ears at the word sex.
Well, I found this. Terry Jones does a series of documentaries about history, and he did the history of sex, and I was amazed at you will find that a lot of the what we have, the attitudes we have about sex, were originated during the time where the Christians were trying to differentiate themselves from the pagans. And as Terry in this movie makes clear, is so often whenever you have a religion forming or trying to institute itself, instead of saying we're for this, they say we're against that. Which is why you have possibly the Baptists, we're against preaching, or some of the other religions, we're against women
like
wearing.
the Abrahamic religions were against the Egyptian religion, and so they started that. And then Christians were against the Jewish religion because there were several things in the Jewish religions that they didn't care for. I mean, Jesus himself was one of the biggest rockers of Jewish boats when he was alive.
But it's The History of Sex. It's by Terry Jones, and it is absolutely amazing. He did a good job on that. What's your favorite movie, by the way?
1 second. We have 10 minutes left in the show. If you'd like to call in, we have time for another call or two, and you can call the number at the bottom of the screen or text us a message at FFTV Knox. One of my favorite movies, and I don't really go in for many religious movies, but growing up was The Ten Commandments. Cecil B. DeMille, the big blockbuster. And what's funny is that at the end of the movie, when Moses has gotten his people through all this trouble, and he's, this big finale coming up in the movie, and he tells his people, go forth, go into the promised land. I can't go with you, but go forth and spread freedom across the land. Well, that was a very nice touch at the end of the movie, but if you think about it, or if you read the Bible, well, first of all, thinking about it, there's not much freedom when you've got a celestial dictator that reads every thought and commands you not to do about 90% of the things that you would do naturally. There's not much freedom there. But the main point I want to make is when he says, go forth and spread freedom, in the Bible what he actually says is, go forth, kill all the people on these lands. God has given us these lands, given us a right to go out there and slaughter all the individuals in all of these cities and take the lands away from them. That was the message in the Bible, not the message in the movie.
That was a cinematic triumph at the time that it came up. There was another one that has affected a lot of people is Passion of the Christ. This has come out within the past 10 years or so, and so it's supposed to be one of the biggest money makers of history.
Passion of the Christ.
This is.
I'm glad that wasn't done in 3D.
I'm glad that wasn't done in 3D. But this is Passion of the Christ, as far as I was concerned, is one of the most awful movies ever made. I counted the number of blows that Jesus suffered in this movie, and it was over 210. And one writer says that, well, all but 6 minutes of the movie is violence.
Yeah, it has blood on the screen.
And
it was an over 2-hour movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, just about. Just about. And one of the things, there were techniques that they were using to get the movies into the churches. One of it was they would send out unrated copies, so that if you sent your kid to church, you did not know whether he actually went to see that movie or not, as opposed to the R rating it usually had, which is supposed to be restricted except by parents' permission.
Right.
As a matter of fact, the assistant director on Passion of the Christ was hit twice by lightning during the filming of the show.
They must not have been doing something right.
Something seemed strong.
Yeah.
Seemed inappropriate.
Yeah. I noticed you have Jesus Christ Superstar in your list.
Jesus Christ Superstar came out in 1973. Now that was a pretty big one. It combined the.
It had some great music. I remember.
Great music. There was it addressed the flower movement, the love movement. You had a lot of those trappings in it, and it was one of the ones that it brought a lot of people to church.
Well, it brought a lot of people to cults too,
and it brought a lot of people to cults.
I lived through that period. And I was in college in '73, and this was after I came out of the Navy. But there weren't a whole lot of Freethought movement then. There was no atheist movement at all, and the kids were really, really tired of the '50s religion, the stiff-necked tie religions that were going from the McCarthy era, and they wanted out of that. But they were still spiritual. They considered themselves spiritual. And they followed an awful lot of really weird gurus. Even the Beatles did. They had their Eastern
Mahesh Yogi.
Yeah, they had their Eastern period, and so many kids were lured into cults of that type, not only of Eastern religion but all religions at that time, trying to find answers that they didn't find in Christianity. And right now, it's still continuing. But the thing about it is. September 11, I think, broke a lot of people away from religion altogether. Brought a lot of people directly back into it because they needed God for answers. But then they find out that there are no real answers there, just the same old pablum that they've been fed for years and years and years.
Well, you'll be happy, well, maybe not happy, because we may have a lot of other cults coming up. But Jesus Christ Superstar, this is first you've heard it, folks, is going to have a remake in 2014. Now, Andrew Lloyd Webber did the music and all in the original because it was from a play. So we'll see how this next one comes out.
That'll be interesting for sure. I wonder if they're going to keep the music intact or pretty close.
I would say they're probably going to rewrite it. Oh, Noah. This is one. It was a horrible movie. It was.
That was the name of the movie?
Noah's Ark. It had John Voight and Mary Steenburgen.
Oh, really?
From
John Voight?
From Back to the Future. In this movie, Noah is on his boat and he gets attacked by pirates. And James Coburn rows up with his little rowboat that has pots and he sells Noah a bunch of wine.
I'm glad you brought that up. Pirates, they had a ship, didn't they?
Yeah.
If you think about it, every navy in the world had ships. Why would they have perished during the Great Flood? Welcome to Freethought Forum. You're on the air. May we have a name or a nickname?
William.
William, we have about 3 minutes left. Do you have a comment or question you'd like to get into?
Yeah, I figured about 2 minutes left, so I just wanted to jump in and mention 2 movies I really enjoyed that kind of have a pairing of it. One, Monty Python from the Holy Grail.
Oh, excellent.
We have, Knoxville in the clouds with a crown, pulls the clouds away, you need to go on a day, I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Well, of course it's a great idea.
Yeah, and The Life of Brian, I bet
the way
you
they handle that is hilarious.
Yeah.
And then also, I guess with another Terry Gilliam film, Hamlet 2, in which they end up having a musical play with
Oh, yes.
I don't remember that one.
I remember that. It was hilarious.
I don't think I've seen it.
Also, Terry Jones was in the Monty Python.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's the one I recommended that History of Sex. You might want to check him out. He's a very funny guy.
Did you see Life of Brian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, that Life of Brian. They didn't really have God so much in the meaning of life, but they, definitely had religion in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's excellent how they parallel Jesus Christ with an unknown person at the same time, and how he could have started a cult or a whole religion by himself.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
it's a great movie.
Yeah, and I'm sure that happens and has happened many times over the course of the centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One of the movies or books I would really love to see as a movie, which kind of would touch it, is the Hyperion Cantos. Hyperion, like Fallen Hyperion, Endymion. Those series, especially the latter 2 books, very heavily into kind of dogmatic Christian religion and just kind of how they get hijacked, and then they kind of have a more of a deist approach to it towards the end. It was really interesting, and I really think that would make a good movie series.
It does sound interesting. I mean, so often you have people that are well-meaning, they're trying to search for something, and they get, like you just said, hijacked by another group that, Napoleon said religion is nothing but politically expedient.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Any other thing you'd like to mention?
About 30 seconds.
I just want to call. I guess I'll see you all later tonight.
Well, thanks for calling.
Well, thank you. You had a couple of books there that you wanted to hold up.
There was a movie that we didn't get to, Passover Plot, but I was going to show that.
Okay.
And this is the movie that I was in.
Oh, cool. You were an extra for that one?
Yeah.
Very
it was
cool.
a Bible movie, too.
Yeah, very good.
Anyway, we've got 30 seconds. Should we tell them what we're going to be doing next week? What's the show for next week?
I don't know offhand. Oh.
I don't either.
Oh, well.
But if you'll
sure to come.
But if you'll set your phone to ring at 5 o'clock next Tuesday, you can join us back here.
Remember to take a minute to set your reminder on your cell phone to see this show every Tuesday from 5 to 6 o'clock Eastern Time, or on this Knoxville station, or 2200 Greenwich Mean Time at ctvknox.org.
And if you do that and you have a smartphone, it'll be smarter.
Mm-hmm. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. You can leave us voice feedback at 865-272-9060. And we'd like to send our thanks out to Sam and Jonas for technical support, and to the staff of CTV Knox and all our callers. Bye. And remember that if you don't believe in God,
you're not alone.